Hello and welcome to our podcast, Real Out Loud. Life happens, we get it. Join us and together we'll be engaging in conversations about the truths not spoken of, reflections about life and other issues, and experiences that reel or bring women off balance. I'm your host and my name is Nicole, and joining me will be my co-host, Inkinia, and on our platform we'll have guests from different facets of life, some who have also had it real with life, and some professionals to give us information on these reflections as we figure out how to survive the real. Stay tuned.
Hello everyone. Hi, Sanbonani Kai Makadi Dumelang. Welcome to a fresh installment.
Fresh and clean, no regrets.
To those who didn't get that, Nick here is making a sly reference to the last podcast that we did.
Yes, regrets. That one took me back a bit, Pinky, and it really inspired a lot of self-introspection.
And
I'm busy doing emotional cleanup inspired by Real Out Loud.
You go, girl. Great. Then we can actually and safely say we have reached 1%.
At least.
We're doing something. We're really doing something. This is Real Out Loud podcast, and we're here with you talking about those life struggles and issues that would otherwise send you reeling if they were unspoken of.
We go through different life situations, experiences, circumstances that bring an emotional, mental imbalance to us in our everyday lives. So we are saying that no one has a manual to life, but come, let's have these discussions together, figure out ways to find the balance without losing ourselves.
Yes. So today, what are we talking about?
Compassion fatigue in caregivers. We are talking about the strain of being exposed to working with people that are suffering. And from these consequences of other people's suffering or the effects of being the carer, people are bound to get to points where they don't have that, that wall that helps them to be able to effectively help a person, but without being emotionally and mentally hooked into the problems or the experiences that the other person is having, or without being triggered from the past traumas that you have individually experienced as a person. So basically, there are things that create these situations. There's one person who needs care and the other person who's actually giving the care. So today our focus mainly is going to be on the other person who is there to give the care. What happens in that process of having to be the one giving the care? Does it come easy or does it come with some struggles? And if it does come with struggles, what are these struggles and how can you help yourself out of that? And how can we help us who are outside? How can we help someone in a similar situation like that?
Compassion can rapidly then turn the tables. The caregiver now becomes the victim.
Definitely. It becomes clear that caregivers actually need someone to also monitor them, and they also need to monitor themselves at the end of the day, because it comes with consequences having to be on that role. Like being a nurse, you are working every day, you're being exposed to people getting into accidents, traumas, and whatnot. Probably you've been in similar situations or overexposure to such situations. You end up losing that emotional connectivity with people because of that experience, basically. You no longer have any feelings. You are literally detached, but you are just there to offer the service, but you are not emotionally involved or mentally connected to the situation. You are being triggered rather than actually being on the help side of things.
It did actually take a turn, in a situation like if a building is burning, you're going to definitely need a firefighter, If you're in a violent situation, you're going to need a police officer or someone of the law to assist you. If you're suffering spiritually, you need someone with a spiritual guidance, And now you're turning it to the person who is supposed to be administering the help is the person that we're going to be focusing more on.
Working in these spaces of high trauma frequency, it affects a person emotionally and how they function under normal circumstances. Imagine you are a nurse, you are the one who has to be in a Benz unit and people are crying, they're in agony all the time. You are seeing those physical fractures and all that. It also triggers your own unresolved traumas. Being repeatedly exposed to these acts of, can
Comes
actually
more.
make you the victim. We are all human beings. At a certain point in time in your life, you go through loss.
Yes.
It's most likely to happen that
Yes.
someone can pass away from your own individual family. But considering the line of work that I'm in, I'm the one who's supposed to actually be the one offering that emotional support to someone who's going through that grief. So now imagine I'm sitting on the other side of the couch and I'm listening to this person who's relating similar experiences to me. Then automatically it triggers certain unresolved traumas of my own.
Let's take it to the professional cost of caring. Whoever needs care, and as we'll see, it's not only limited to healthcare, they are going to need someone to administer that care. A patient needs a nurse, a doctor, or a therapist, or so on.
Look at a teacher. You are in a class of 50 kids. It's still a lot to have to take care of each emotional need individually or each physical need before you actually do your job of teaching these kids.
Yeah.
You have to be the one coming in, making sure that their needs are met and all that. That can end up being emotionally draining. You get to a point where you are pouring from an empty cup. Imagine a journalist. I remember one of the days there was violence happening on TV.
Yeah.
And this reporter is busy reporting about what's happening over TV. And at the back, people are being shot. There is fights at the back. Being exposed to such violent scenes while you're doing your job, it takes a lot on you as well.
What happens then? Are there any institutions that are set, for the caregivers to deal with this type of situations when the tables are turned and I'm being the victim now?
Since these are things that are not planned, you don't knowingly become the victim, because obviously when they employ you to be a nurse, they expect you to be effective at your job. When they employ you to be a doctor, they expect you to be good at your job. No one really thinks about those other consequences on the other end. But fortunate enough, there are institutions and organizations that have put EAP programs in place. They are put there so that they can help people in terms of monitoring how well a certain individual is coping within that profession.
Okay.
And how they go about their job. If there's an incident that happens that kind of like triggers trauma experiences in people, then they do debriefing sessions. Maybe for someone who's listening, might be thinking, why do you keep referring to trauma? When we are talking of trauma, we are talking about basically those life-threatening incidences that affect you emotionally as well. Maybe I'm driving a car with a colleague, I get into an accident, something happens to my colleague, or just the experience of being in that accident, it also triggers certain emotions and reactions from me. So that life-threatening experience can start to create imbalances emotionally, physically, and mentally. So that's why you find that those EAP programs, they also facilitate things like debriefing sessions for people, where they get to speak about their experiences, their difficulties, get to share their experiences, normalize those experiences, acknowledge what they are individually going through, and give each other support of learning maybe how to cope with those realities.
So it first comes with self-monitoring, because for me to actually say this, it's becoming too much for me, it means I am actually noticing that.
Yes, it's part of the package. But it's not always when an individual can actually self-monitor. Sometimes we go through experiences that to us it feels normal. But when other people are looking at you, they see the change. They see the dysfunction. So sometimes it actually needs people that are outside to actually identify that need. To say, look, Nicole, you're not coping under such circumstances. Don't you think you need to take a break? Maybe you need a leave. Or is everything okay? We need that kind of constant, support and monitoring as well. So that's why you find that these people that we are talking about, these programs that we are talking about, they then come to assess if you are ready after you have gone through this traumatic incident. If you are ready, they also assess your functioning on a normal day. If you're at work, Pinky, you're always late or you're always calling in sick, then we need to figure out what is wrong with Pinky. You can't have a crisis all the time. There should be something happening, but we don't know what it is. So let's address the issue, only to come back and realize it's actually that compassion fatigue that is now starting to kick in as well. So it's starting to cause imbalances in your own ability to function. Because remember, it comes with its own risks. There are certain consequences that come as a result of that.
All right. This is very interesting. Let's take a short break. All right, Nick. So, in a situation that, let me give mine, growing up, I was molested. Then, at a later age, when I was a teenager and all that, I was nearly raped, Then I become very passionate and compassionate about rape victims and children. Then I decide to be in that field. Then, literally now it gets too much for me. Like, I feel like I can't breathe. Can I actually say I've reached my limits and I don't want to be doing this anymore?
I'm just thinking, when you actually go into the job, it's not like you are literally expecting to just suffer the compassion fatigue or the secondary trauma as a result of the fact that you're exposed to these experiences. Obviously, when you approach the job, I'm sure you are going there with a survivor mentality to say, you know what, I want to help other people. I have overcome this situation and I know what it feels to be in that zone or in that similar experience. So you kind of feel like you are equipped. And then you go there with that survivor mentality. But sometimes you can find that unintentionally, so you can, at some level, suffer the secondary trauma that then creates, the compassion fatigue, even if it's something that hasn't been planned. It's also very important to know your limits as a person. Sometimes we don't know what we are capable of until we actually go through it. So when you are out there and you are having this survivor mentality, it's easier for you to make the decision from outward. But when you are there now, it can create some kind of discomfort being in that particular situation, not because you are weak-minded or weak-spirited, but it's just part of the experiences that people go through. Sometimes it might be because maybe you haven't resolved your own trauma. That's why you get easily triggered that way. So you'll find that the unresolved trauma and high caseloads of similar experiences over and over again, when you are working in a less supportive atmosphere or environment, then it makes it very hard. You start to feel overwhelmed and it starts to create an emotional toll on you as an individual.
All right. So I think that's when it will also bring in the value of talking about your difficult experiences,
When now we are doing these debriefing sessions, it's like a sit-in session. You are in a group setup. You are just talking, sharing experiences with someone sitting there, a professional, facilitating the whole talk. So you're sharing those experiences. You are exposing them. When you speak about your emotions, you disempower them. You disarm them in a way. It's not every organization that's going to have measures in place that actually help to detect the problem, and resolve it.
Yeah, especially our developing countries. I think we're not there yet.
I think I will emphasize the importance of self-compassion as well.
Exactly.
To know your limits as a person, to know your struggles, what is it that you're dealing with, detect the problem.
True.
And not to undermine the value of self-monitoring. Know what you are dealing with in that particular moment. It also helps you to...
up to now, we've been talking a lot about compassion fatigue at a professional level and mostly in an institution, We have to talk about the burden weighing heavily on family members. Me as a child, I'm not not equipped, to be at a professional level to be a caregiver, but I am in a situation where I must.
Mostly in home environment or in home environment situations, some people really do not have access to chronic care facilities.
Yeah.
So the cost of putting, let's say, a mental patient or a cancer patient in a care facility, it can actually be financially prohibitive to certain people or simply unavailable in some parts of the world. Come on, guys, we're from Africa. And we realize that even if you have money, sometimes there are no facilities.
True.
Or you can have the facilities, but you can't access them because you don't have money. So there's a cost of putting, let's say, a mental patient or the cancer patient in a facility. But imagine someone who has to be 24/7, 7 days a week, 31 days a month, 365 days a year, be with the same person 24/7. You are offering care and support to this person. It can also be emotionally draining.
Yeah. Very true, very true. And I am sure to some of us who are listening right now, like we actually took you back to where a situation, or you are actually in a situation where you are a caregiver to one of your family members or to one of your close people, and you're not equipped for it, but you're doing it. Yeah.
You remind me of a time when I used to see these documentaries where kids become the caregiver.
Yes.
The mother is HIV positive, they're sick, they are beyond being capable of taking care of themselves. And then you find that a very young child, a grade 3, 4, 5 child, has to step up and be the caregiver of such a person. You can imagine someone who's that young, what they have to go through.
They actually still in need of someone to be taking care of them, but they're stepping out to the plate of being the one taking care of someone. We have situations where our children have to drop out of school to be taking care of our old grannies. And
I actually remember the time, when I also had to experience a fair share of being there for my parent when they were having a chronic illness. We spoke about it when we did the episode of Ellen, my similar experience with a cancer patient. You get in that autopilot zone where, you literally do not sleep anymore. You can just wake up at any time of the night and you have to offer care when necessary. If this person needs assistance to go to the bathroom, if they need medication at that time, if they need you to help them turn, it comes with a lot. Yeah, I remember there were times when we would literally be the ones crying. And imagine this is the person in pain and you are the one crying. I'm not crying because I'm weak-minded or I'm just a weak person, but it comes to those points where you are feeling compassion for this person, but you are running out yourself.
We try and find a coping mechanism, but in the process we tend to substance abuse, or which can be anything. It can be food, it can be drugs, it can be drinking.
Like we are saying, you lack the skill, you are not adequately trained, so it's gonna be overwhelming. Sometimes you can make mistakes that can create self-blame. Probably you were supposed to turn someone and then you find that when you were turning them, you actually fractured them even more. So how do you deal with when something goes wrong like that? How do you deal with that, with that frustration or that guilt or that blame of having to know that I'm responsible for causing additional consequences to their circumstances and their situation? That's when it comes to what you're talking about now. I can't cope. I'm struggling to find balance. So now I tend to the maladaptive coping mechanisms, the substance abuse. You drink your lungs out because you just want to forget the pain. You don't want to have to deal with anything. You don't want to think about anything. You don't want to feel anything. You can overeat. Food, there's so much comfort in food. Have you ever had those moments where you just sit down and you're not feeling good? It's particularly after things like a breakup or something, or
Yes,
someone has just
yes.
screamed at you, something terrible happened at work, and then you're just there, you're munching.
Yeah, you
The
just want
stomach
your
never tells
comfort
you you
food.
are okay now, because what's eating is the emotion. You find other people, they tend to reckless or impulsive behaviors. I go and I start over shopping. Ladies, we are very prone to that. When I'm not feeling good, I'll go and buy these shoes and this dress. But when I'm okay, I'll actually look at the dress and I'm like, what? Who bought this for me?
It's not even
You
my
know?
favorite color. Yeah.
And you might find even your immune system starts to weaken over time.
True.
That's why you find today I've got a headache. I don't know what's wrong. Tomorrow I've got a stomach ache.
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow my back, this and that. And it doesn't go away until I get the necessary help that is needed. Or just mere sleepless nights, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
struggling to fall asleep,
I struggle with
feeling
that.
tired.
I struggle with falling asleep myself, but I don't know where it's coming from or what's it. But I really do struggle to fall asleep.
But when you pay attention to your life, your experiences at that stage, your thoughts, your what you're going through in that moment, sometimes it will help you to actually figure out what is wrong.
Yeah, we're just gonna take a short break, and you can also leave a comment if you know something that might be useful and helpful to someone out there. Welcome back. In our last segment, Nick, we were discussing caregivers in a family setup. Even the signs are there that we are struggling. The fact is, we cannot stop caring for our loved ones, even if it's hurting us. We can't choose to stop caring.
So now, because we can't abandon our loved ones in their time of need, we see the need to start looking into managing, the situation in a diligent manner. And there's no way to actually insulate ourselves from what's being called the cost of caring. But there are certain things that we can actually do, like shared responsibility. It doesn't mean that if my mother is sick and I'm the one taking care of her, then the other relatives wash their hands off the responsibility. Sometimes people need financial assistance, Pinky.
Yes.
Imagine you need to take a person to the hospital, you need an ambulance. So those mere acts of kindness from other people, family members, the shared responsibility, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, to just go and check up on a particular person, it also helps, even with the living arrangements. If our granny is having dementia, they are old, they cannot take care of themselves anymore, or we've got someone who's mentally ill in the family, sometimes we also need to switch houses. Today, my sister is at your house, Pinky.
Oh, yes.
Tomorrow, they go to
Yes.
another brother or another sister, another cousin. We share responsibilities like that. But if we put the burden on one person, then it makes it very hard for that particular individual to even care and be able to give our loved one the care that they deserve.
I feel like faith does play also a major role into this. When
You're right.
Yeah, when we have faith and we have the belief that they're actually going to get better, but we also have to be realistic about it and the expectations when the patient is suffering from a progressive disease.
It's very important to keep the balance between denial and hope. Sometimes as people, when you're going through a difficult situation, you can really struggle to keep that balance of denying the reality, to say this condition, it's something that cannot be undone or changed. And it's not something that can get better over time, but we just need to manage the person. But sometimes as people, we fall on either of the continuum, either denial, oh, this can't be happening, or we are too hopeful, oh, they're going to get better, they're going to be healed. And those two components, if they are excessively abused, they tend to hurt people more than they help people. So what is important in that scenario It's to accept the situation as it is. Going back to your faith should not be as a platform for you to deny or to be too hopeful. But it should be a platform that actually helps you as an individual in that situation that you are in to work on that helplessness that I was talking about that creates the depression and the high blood pressures and the whatnot. When we were saying that you start to feel helpless because of the situation, you can't do much to change it or to make it better. So it means that now when you go back to your faith, you are remembering and reminding yourself you are not in absolute control of what has to happen, but you can only do so much within your capacity. And also one thing, let me tell you, there's one thing that really worked for me during my times. It was celebrating the small victory.
Ooh,
You know, when mom takes 2 spoons of, food, that day would be like,
hey, well done.
Today
well
when she
done.
wakes up, she can walk on her own, she can do things on her own. It will be like, yay, today she was cooking, she was,
and it's
she was
beautiful.
laughing,
It's beautiful,
she was
on its
smiling.
Own. Yeah.
Such kind of moments, they relieve you of the pain that comes and the overwhelming emotions that come as a result of what the person is going through. And sometimes it's also important to think of things like support groups, therapy, counseling. We can never do anything alone.
Help is always one conversation away. Talk.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. So sometimes we need other people to come in and share the burden with us so that we don't fall on that other side of suffering as a result of caring for our loved one. I also speak to, to friends, family, Pinky. Check up on each other. How was your day, Pinky? How are you holding up? This is not an easy time for you. I won't lie to you. There's certain parts of yourself that you lose. The bubbly person that I know you to be, it can disappear.
I just want to let it be known out there to those who are listening that you can also talk to us. You can talk back to us. You can always send an email at Nicole.
And we'll refer you to the relevant people that can help you.
Yes.
Based on what is it exactly you are dealing
that you
with
need
in that
help
moment.
with. Yes. Let's converse. Let's talk. Let us be there for each other. Let us be kind. Let us be human. And to our caregivers, to our little ones who are taking care of the adults, our grannies and our mothers, we say thank you. And just find victories, like Nicole said, find victories in those small little things and celebrate them. Love yourself, be there for yourself, and allow help to come in when help is needed. Seek help.
And let me just clarify something, Pinky, before you wrap it up. I'm just thinking, sometimes also, it's not like people are not really getting help. They're not trying to get help. Probably the places that they're going to, they're not getting the help that they've expected. That's why it's very important to identify the people that, it doesn't mean that if, Pinky, you are my sister, if I have a problem, you're going to come through for me. Some people are not made that way. But if I go to a friend, you might find a friend who break a leg and an arm just to be there for me. So identify your support in the necessary ways. Sometimes, in developed countries, they've got social workers who are supportive. They've got nurses that come in for home-based care. If it's something that you can afford, if those resources are there, get that help from those people. It doesn't necessarily have to be family only at the end of the day. All right, thank you guys for listening in on our episode for today. Don't hesitate to send your comments to our email, nicole@realoutloud.co.za.
For more on our episodes, on these relatable conversations, powerful and empowering messages, and access to these discussions on actionable tips, please check us on our website, www.realoutloud.co.za, or other podcast platforms such as Google Play, iTunes, and many other. Our episodes are also accessible on social media platforms indicated on our website, and our YouTube page. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and invite others to our webpage. Ciao!